April 1997. I still have no memories of what was going on at that time except for working at Illyria Arts. Some memories are coming up eventually, I swear. But it doesn't matter this time because I'm going to be going off on a huge tangent. But we'll get to that. Let's start with the books I read in April of 1997. And the first book was Redwall by Brian Jacques. Don't know if that's how you pronounce his name. This is a cute little fantasy novel, first in a long series. Soon to be a movie on Netflix, I think I saw somewhere. But it's a fantasy world where all the characters are like forest critters. The main characters are good guys, are all mice. The main bad guy in this story is a rat. And then, there's cats and foxes and all that kind of stuff. And this is your, for lack of a better way to put it, typical, hero's journey kind of story. But with these cute little animals as the main characters. It was a lot of fun. Very popular series. Next up, another one that's the first in a series, The First Mountain Man by William W. Johnstone. And the main character's name is Preacher. He's a mountain man. This is a Western. And it's William Johnstone, who I think is very obviously, to me anyways, conservative in his writing, even though his horror novels, I have a bunch of his horror novels, can be pretty graphic, and there's some graphic sex, a lot of that, but a lot of the ideas feel very conservative. And in The First Mountain Man, it's very much sort of white man good, Native American, and I don't know if that term is ever used in this book, but Native American bad. But Preacher has to get a wagon train safely from one place to another, and they're going to have to deal with outlaws and savages, as it says. William Johnstone, not the greatest writer, in my opinion. It's crazy. The dude has tons and tons of books, and his name carries enough cachet that after his death, they're still putting out William W. Johnstone books. I know a number of people that have either ghostwritten some of the newer William W. Johnstones, or at least were going to, possibly may have, but things fell apart and they didn't. But very popular author. My stepfather loves him. I have his horror because they're great, like Paperbacks from Hell covers, and they're trashy. They're not great books, but they can be entertaining. But that's The First Mountain Man by William W. Johnstone. Then we have X-Men Mutant Empire Book 3, Salvation by Christopher Golden. I have the omnibus edition. This is probably the third time I've shown it since it's book 3. And Magneto has taken over New York. It's guarded by mutants and reprogrammed Sentinels. The X-Men are still trying to stop him. They have to team up with the government that thinks they're just as bad as Magneto, and they're going to have to team up with Juggernaut. Are they going to be able to take him down? Well, probably. It's the X-Men. And it's Christopher Golden. So, even though I'm not a huge X-Men fan, I am a Christopher Golden fan, which is why, even though I don't have the individual books, I bought the omnibus that has the whole story. All right, here we go, people. This is where things are going to get crazy. Book number 4 that I read in April of 1997 was Borderlands 1, or Borderlands Volume 1, depending on what copy you're looking at, edited by Thomas F. Monteleone. First of all, the book is an anthology, and Mr. Monteleone wanted books that were, or stories that didn't carry the familiar tropes and the familiar symbols of horror He wanted things, on the edge, from the borderlands. A lot of great authors in here: Nancy Holder, Bentley Little, John Shirley, Ed Gorman, Elizabeth Massey, Joe R. Lansdale, just to name a few. And so great authors, great stories. Now, here's the tangent. Since his name came up, as of this recording, I think it's been a couple of weeks, excuse me, where we have seen online an almost perfect example of how to destroy your career in one move. Maybe 2 or 3 moves. Depends on how you look at it. So, Thomas F. Monteleone, editor, author, mentor, and friend to tons of horror writers. He ran the Borderlands Boot Camp, which was a writing workshop weekend thing. I think he ran it for 25 years. Last year, Brian Keene announced he and Mary Sangiovanni were taking it over. I think it was last year that it was announced, because I think this year was supposed to be the first time for them running it. So, pretty big name in horror. Well, a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was, as of this recording, Thomas F. Monteleone posted on Facebook that he had sent a letter to the Horror Writers Association. It's Bram Stoker Awards season, and so he wanted to nominate somebody for the Lifetime Achievement Award, which is fine. Just send a letter, say, hey, I'd like to nominate this person. This is everything they've done. But he didn't do that. Now, I don't want to get in any trouble, so I will say right now I am paraphrasing things. I don't have direct quotes, just going over some of this stuff. What he did in this letter to the HWA was point out things like he made it a point to say that he was nominating a smart old white guy, and that the last few years of the Lifetime Achievement Award have looked like, I think it's DEI initiative, which is diversity, something, and inclusivity. I don't remember what the E is for. And he talked, so he, instead of just nominating this person, he made it a point to say that it looks like the HWA is being woke, and that he hopes they listen to him, because God forbid he nominates a white guy. So, of course, comments start flooding in to his Facebook post, and he doubles down on what he's saying. He's never even heard it. There were 2 women who had won the Lifetime Achievement Award, and he says he's never even heard of them. Some people are getting awards just for writing while black, or writing while female or gay or whatever. Then the backlash really, really hit. And now, Brian Keene has a new interview show that is up on Facebook. I don't know where else you might find it. Or not Facebook, excuse me, YouTube. And he recently did an episode with Mary Sangiovanni, Christopher Golden, where they talked about this. And so they mentioned, at least Mary and Brian mentioned, that Thomas Monteleone reached out to them privately and apologized. And then, the next day, he went on I think it's a YouTube show with, I don't know who these guys are, but they're ultra conservative provocateurs, I don't know. and again just was spouting this stuff. Called one of the, I think it was one of the winners of the Lifetime Achievement Award, a fat black woman. And I believe they're non-binary. He said that he will never use they as a singular, and whoever came up with that should be taken out back and beaten. And someone on the Facebook, because he said that on his Facebook post as well, someone immediately pulled up a screenshot of a time when he used they as a singular, which everybody has done. Because he said, Thomas, in some post on social media, said something like, and again, I have no quotes, but basically something like, someone wrote a really nice review for such and such. I hope that they know how much I appreciate it. That is using they in the singular. So anyway, so he, for like 2 hours, was just laughing with these guys on this show, talking about all this stuff, anti-wokeness, all of this. And so he's been kicked out of the Horror Writers Association, banned from a bunch of conventions, and it's torn up. There's been this rift, a little bit of a rift anyway, it might be bigger than I know of, in the horror community. I've seen people arguing about it. I've seen some people saying, he's just an old man, and that's just the way he is. And other people arguing that there are other people his age that don't believe these things. So you can't use the he's just an old man excuse. It's just insanity. And I'm going to post either in one of the boxes on the screen at the end of the video, or in a link down in the comment, or in the description, I'll post a link to the Brian Keene, Mary St. Giovanni, Christopher Golden interview, discussion, whatever you want to call it, because Brian Keene does have quotes, and they all have very personal connections, good or bad, with Thomas Monteleone. I watched the whole thing, and it's sad, it's anger-inducing, it's craziness. But so that's that's the editor of Borderlands 1, which I read back in April of 1997. It's just wild. Let's move on. But if you're interested in hearing more details than I can give, then please click whichever link I end up putting out for the Brian Keene thing. And of course, you can find it all on social media. Well, next up was Hercules, the First Casualty by David L. Seidman. This is another original novel based on Hercules, the Legendary Journeys, the TV show. And in this one, Hercules, I believe, gets in the middle of this dispute between two towns, but all their troubles were caused by Hercules. Somebody's been posing as Hercules, causing trouble. Hercules has to basically clear his name. Fun little stuff. Then we have one of the granddaddies of science fiction books, Foundation by Isaac Asimov. The classic book about Harry Seldon, the fall of the Empire. This is so far in the future, 20,000 years or some such. So Harry Seldon, through his psychohistory, is able to predict what's coming with a pretty good degree of accuracy. And he is predicting that there's going to be 30,000 years of dark ages, essentially. And so he gathers scientists and scholars, and they're going to go to this planet out on the edge and create the foundation, which will hopefully save all of the best of humanity, the knowledge and everything. But it's going to take generations. And it's such a fantastic book. Absolutely one of my favorite science fiction novels. One that I should reread it soon. I have so much to read, but I love rereading this kind of stuff. But Foundation, Isaac Asimov, fantastic book. Then we have The Osterman Weekend by Robert Ludlum. I think I can't remember if this is the first time I've read it. I know I've read it more than once. Mainly because it's a movie starring Rutger Hauer, and I like Rutger Hauer. The movie wasn't bad. This is only Robert Ludlum's second book, second published novel, and basically you've got this guy that works for a U.S. news service, and he's supposed to go on this weekend with a bunch of people, and the government comes to him and says, your friends aren't who that you think they are. They're commies, whatever, bad guys. When you're on this weekend, you need to be a good guy. Take care of these people. But of course, it's Robert Ludlum. There's twists and turns, and we don't know who the good guys are, who the bad guys are, what the truth is, what's going on. It's fine. I'm not a big Robert Ludlum fan. I never really got into his writing style. And I haven't seen a lot of his movies. As I said, I've seen The Osterman Weekend. I've seen The Bourne Identity. Never read the book. That's the only one of the Bourne movies I've seen. If you're into this kind of stuff, and I do like a good thriller, but I don't know. His style for me was really, really dry. But The Osterman Weekend, Robert Ludlum. Then we have, I probably should have looked at the back of this book. I meant to before I started. All right, well, what we have next is Confess, Fletch by Gregory MacDonald. Fletch is, what does this say? Fletch is getting home from Rome. His Italian fiance's father has disappeared. Fletch is on the trail of a stolen art collection. Dead body in his apartment. We have our crossover with Inspector Flynn, another character, with a short series of books from Gregory MacDonald. And I believe this is the story that relatively recently, as of this recording, last year sometime I believe, was a John Hamm movie. And I've heard good things about it. I haven't had a chance to see it yet. But I didn't realize that Inspector Flynn is in the story, so I'm going to have to check like the IMDb and see if there's any of the actors are listed as Flynn, because Flynn's a really interesting character, and it might push me to watch the movie a little sooner than I had planned. But yeah, Confess, Fletch, great book, another one of the really, really good Fletch books. There's only a few that disappointed me. And it's crazy that Fletch started out as this reporter, this hotshot, young, rebellious, smart-ass reporter, and he's only that in a very few of the books, because of essentially the events of the very first book. There are some prequels where he's a reporter still, but in the very first book, some stuff happens, and it sort of changes his whole life. He's not a reporter in most of the books. Spoilers. But I recommend it. Good fun. All right. Then we have Murder at Fenway Park by Troy Soos. Soos. Simple baseball-themed mystery. You got a baseball player, his first day at Fenway Park, finds a dead body. He's a suspect for the murder, so he has to solve it and clear his name. I think I bought this for my mother. She's a huge baseball fan. She's a huge mystery fan. So I think I bought it for her and then borrowed it to read it, because I do like mysteries. Don't care that much about baseball. It was fine. It didn't do much for me. But if you're into mysteries and baseball, maybe you want to check it out. Then we have, I screwed things up. I don't know why. I forgot to look this one up, because Fletch's Fortune by Gregory MacDonald was the penultimate book that I read in April of 1997. I don't have a copy. I forgot to look up what the story is. And I'm not going to re-record this entire video. I think I was just too excited to talk about the Thomas F. Monteleone stuff. But somehow I skipped this. But it's another Fletch book. You know it's going to be good. You're just going to have to take my word for it. And then finally, the last book that I read in April of 1997 was Shock, or the copy that I had was Shock 1 by Richard Matheson. It's a short story collection. Some of the possibly more well-known stories are The Children of Noah, The Splendid Source, Long Distance Call. I believe there's 13 short stories in here. Richard Matheson, a master storyteller. His short stories are almost always fantastic. The Splendid Source, excuse me, originally published in Playboy, I believe, was spoofed on Family Guy. There's an entire episode, because I think The Splendid Source is about someone trying to find the source of dirty jokes. And they basically, in Family Guy, I think it's Quagmire, tells a joke that makes Peter poop his pants. And they play with that for a little bit of the show. But then they all decide, the guys, Peter, Joe, Quagmire, and eventually Cleveland, decide that they want to find the source of this joke. But anyway, I'm a Family Guy fan. I love that episode. But that's based on this story, The Splendid Source by Richard Matheson. Long Distance Call, I believe, was made into an episode of either Night Gallery or Twilight Zone or one of those other shows, anthology horror-ish shows. Again, it's Richard Matheson. It's fantastic stuff. I wish I still had them, a nice set. There's 3 Shock volumes, which is why I looked it up, and I saw a couple older editions that just say Shock on them. But the volumes that I had all had the same cover, all the same edition, and it had Shock 1, Shock 2, and Shock 3, which is why I have 1 written down. But if you're a Richard Matheson fan, you can't go wrong with Richard Matheson short stories. So that's it for the books that I read in April of 1997, except basically for Fletch's Fortune, because I forgot to look up what the hell it was about. And I know I've talked about it before, because I've read it before, but trust me, it's good. And my question for this video is basically, do you have any thoughts on this whole Thomas F. Monteleone business? Do you think that there should be consequences for these types of things that people do? He said some, I think, reprehensible things, and he's been kicked out of the HWA, banned from conventions. It might gain him some fans, but it certainly lost him, I think, a lot more. So what do you think? Is it reasonable? Are these reasonable consequences for the things that he has said? Or do you completely separate the artist from the art? I don't. I've never seen Rosemary's Baby because it's directed by Roman Polanski. I know everyone says it's a fantastic... Not everyone, of course. There are people that don't like it, but most people seem to think it's a fantastic movie. I really enjoyed the book, but even though I'm sure I could find it somewhere and watch it for free, I just don't want to, because it's Roman Polanski. I just posted recently on social media that the quickest way for me to cull or the easiest way, I think, for me to cull my book collection is when an author turns out to be a piece of shit. Because recently, not going to get into this, but there is an author who was called out for terrible behavior. They immediately took their books off the market, got rid of all of their social media accounts, and 2 of their books, one I've read, I really enjoyed it. The other one I haven't read, and I'm not going to. I've put both of them on the pile of books that are going to half-price books. I'm not going to burn them. I'll get something out of them. But even though, the person already has my money, but I don't want them. They did some horrible things. I don't want the books. What are your thoughts? That's basically the question. Let me know about this controversial topic. We're getting deep here. Let me know in the comments below. And if you have any comments, questions, or corrections, if you want to know when I'm going to get my overhead light fixed, I'll tell you right now, I don't know. Eventually. But if you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. If you care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronin5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is ErikSmith5757. That's Eric with a K. ERIKSMITH5757. That is all I have for you this week. So until next week, read more books.